Today on Locked On Phoenix Suns, the media comments, the press availabilities for the NBA Summer League, recapping the offseason. It's all coming. We're hearing from the people who make up the Phoenix Suns. We'll talk about one set of comments we totally believe, and one a little less. Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Phoenix Suns. I'm Brendon, Kleen, a staff writer at Awful Announcing and a credentialed Suns media member. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen here on this Wednesday. Don't forget, Locked On Suns is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, so click that follow or subscribe button. Do what thousands of other Suns fans have already done. Become an everydayer. Get locked on to the Phoenix Suns right here each and every day. Today's episode brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances right now with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com to try it out for yourself and get 50% off your first year. More from them later on in the show. We've got news to hit and some comments to dissect and decipher. Joining me to do it, as always, from the wonderful West Valley, my fellow Suns credentialed media member. How are we feeling, Ben Garcia?
What's up, man? I'm doing good. More stuff to kind of react to. Brian Gregory giving some media availability last night, although didn't give us the juicy details regarding Bradley Beal. We can settle for some of the things that he did talk about.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that he was so, of course, you kind of have to say it, but he seemed genuinely pleased with the trade that the Suns got back for Kevin Durant, and of course, we've seen how they've gotten to work since then, so they seem pretty happy. They seem content. They're building a roster that I think they envisioned, and it is about to, at least a lot of the players from it, get onto the court this upcoming weekend in Las Vegas, and we'll see how that looks and cover it right here on the show. But let's start with the comments you did like from Gregory, and I believe some of the players as well, Ben. Tell us what you're liking from this first slate of comments we've heard this week.
Well, it seems like for the first time, the Suns are pretty confident in what they have, and it's not just we have star power. It's them actually giving cohesive thoughts about this is what we're trying to build. The fact that, Ryan Dunn bringing out that he likes that Brian Gregory is building dogs, and the fact that Ryan Dunn is saying that and not Brian Gregory, it leads me to believe that the players are buying into that culture too. Like, maybe I think it's no shade at other players if you're Ryan Dunn, but you're like, I got Grayson Allen off the bench to kind of hit a three, but also be spunky on defense, and same with Dylan Brooks, pushing guys around. Like, we are protecting our players now. Like, the Suns are building a culture, and for the first time in the Matt Ishbia ownership, it's not because we have more star power than you. We have the big three. We're not going to get a point guard because we want to put the ball in those guys' hands. It feels like they're actually building an X's and O's culture around this team regarding what type of players they want, and we've seen that consistently. So that's the biggest thing I really like and I took from it. But what about you?
Well, Gregory mentioned it too, and it's funny, like this time of year, Summer League specifically, and I think probably training camp in a little bit too, are these times where the college coach really comes out of him in a way that's actually good. Like he seemed like a little kid on Christmas talking about the level of intensity and physicality in these first few practices. And I think that that's a really good sign. If nothing else, it's a meme and we all know that at this point, but like the alignment part of it is definitely there. Like, they had a vision and they're putting it together. All the players still have to play well and click and develop and get chemistry and everything else, but the vision is here. The other thing I would say, kind of along these lines, a little different maybe though, is I've just been so impressed by Khaman Maluach. His
that's
comments,
a good point, man.
And it's not exactly the, rah-rah dog, physicality stuff, but it's just this head on his shoulders that's insane for being 18 years old. Like, not just the, personal story where he started playing basketball late, obviously came from South Sudan and came over to Duke and all those types of things, but even just the self-awareness of himself as a player, I think has been crazy. That's like a big thing I watch for when I'm looking at any kind of young player, but especially basketball, because in theory, basketball player can do anything. They don't play a position. They do, but, they could think of themselves as much more than that. I love when guys are just so locked into what their role is going to be, and I think Maluach has been that 100%. I'm going to be good on defense.
Yeah, that's a good point, man.
I'm going to grow on these things. It's all been really, really good to hear.
In any sport, it doesn't matter what it is, in any team, the first thing you can kind of see in a roster if dysfunction is like, if they're just accumulating talent and not good people. We've seen this talked about like with the Cardinals or like with the Diamondbacks, but now it's kind of approached the Suns too, where they're not just worried about their player. They're not just worried about the play on the court. They're worried about the person off the court. And Ryan Dunn, I think, has a spectacular head on his shoulder. Oso Ighodaro is a like low, it feels like bring the temperature down in the room kind of guy. Seems like he gets along with like Colin Gillespie and Ryan Dunn as well. Yesterday, they're at the press conference. They were at Jordan Ott press conference a couple of weeks ago, and they followed that up with Khaman Maluach, who I think it's because of his journey, like of why he had to grow up a lot quicker. Yeah. Whereas like me in, the life that I lived, I would say is probably a lot easier than what Khaman Maluach had to grow up on. And so we had to mature a lot quicker. And same with Rasheed Fleming. He's an older guy, St. Joe's, kind of, had to work on his game, a little bit tougher of a road to get to the NBA. Like, I appreciate that the Suns are bringing in not only high-level players, but guys who they know they don't have to worry about at 2:30 in the morning because they were going 300 miles an hour on the freeway. Like, that is not a little thing, and it translates to the locker room.
Much different than the Ryan McDonough era for sure, where there were a lot of those guys that were brought in that had some off-court questions, whether that's Tyler Ulis or,
Marquise Chris, Josh Jackson,
etc. So definitely a good thing to be able to build if you can. And Fleming, that dude was one of those guys on draft night where the interview that he gave, he was like legitimately shocked he was drafted. Like, obviously we all knew he would be drafted, but you can just tell with certain guys, like that moment is hitting them, all the work that they put in. So certainly a testament on his side as well. But let's get to the thing that maybe you were a little more skeptical on, which was a more basketball-focused answer from Brian Gregory regarding the fit of Booker and Jalen Green together. He was asked how they're going to fit, especially in contrast to what we just saw with Booker and Beal not fit so well, right? He said, quote, "I think there's a speed factor that's being played in the NBA right now. Both Green and Booker are great with the ball. They can play off each other when either one doesn't have the ball." He said that our style of play, the Suns' style of play, at a faster pace with better movement is going to open the court up for both of them. He later went on to talk about, being able to force turnovers if they're starting their possessions with, good defense. That's just going to create an open floor for both guys. And he talked about, Ben, the need that he sees for this roster to be a lot better attacking the basket offensively. And he kind of went through how he sees that happening, of course, very basketball person speak of there's three ways to do it. You can drive, you can cut, or you know what I mean? But I think that they clearly see the downhill scoring ability of Jalen Green as one of the best elements, if not the best element of what he's going to bring to this team. And they seem pretty dedicated and determined to opening those opportunities up for him. But it sounds like when you heard that, you might have been a little skeptical.
I rolled my eyes. It was the type of rolling your eyes where it's like, I understand why you have to say it, but I don't really like that you have to. Like, we can both live with that. It was reported by numerous people out here in Phoenix that the Suns were looking to find a third team for Jalen Green. So I understand that the Suns are saying, pomp and thrill, and we love Jalen Green. It's like, no matter who the Phoenix Suns drafted with the 10th overall pick, they were always going to say, we got our guy. This was our first option. They're never going to say it's our third or fourth option. We know about the struggles with Jalen Green. Some nights he is going to drop 30 points, and most nights he's going to get his 20 points, but maybe not as efficient as you'd like, especially shooting the ball. So I agree. He didn't necessarily lie about getting to the rack, becoming more athletic, playing with pace, all things that you and I have talked about. But the fit, we've worried about with Booker for a little bit. How is the no, your turn, no, my turn, no kick out to Jalen Green and have him be a shooter? Is Jalen Green going to be an effective passer, finding Devin? But like, there are those worries, but they cannot lie to me and tell me that they're so excited about having Jalen Green here and the potential backcourt duo of these two guys when we know that that's not the case. So I understand it. I understand why they said it. They're going to stand by their guy, but it's like the additive of don't pee on my leg and tell me it's raining. You know what I mean?
For sure, for sure. And I think we're both a little bit skeptical of the fit, and I think a lot of Suns fans are. It's going to require a big adaptation by Jalen Green. There's no way around that. I'll just say the one thing I'm a little bit skeptical of here as well is playing Jalen Green with so many other players, at least as far as what the roster looks like right now, that can't shoot great aside from him, isn't necessarily going to create those openings for him to get to the basket. And I hope that they find workarounds there. But at the same time, we talk about his three-point shooting being hit or miss. He shot 41% on catch and shoot threes last year. Previous season, I believe was similar from when I looked at it before. And so, okay, not similar. He was 32%. So, that if that can hit, that's a big element of it. I have thought about that, them shopping him as part of expanding that trade, although of course it became 7 teams eventually, because I wonder if there was no bites or if they were just pretty paltry, right? And I'd be curious to know what, if any, the offers actually were, because that would put into perspective a little bit more how much they actually value him, right? If there were 0 offers and they're stuck with him, that's different. If a couple teams said, hey, we'll send you, a bad second-round pick and this random player we don't really love, okay, that kind of changes things. Who's the player? What's the pick? You know what I mean? So I think that they probably believe in him to a degree. They at least believe in him enough to make his trade value go up, right? Because even if they don't keep him long-term, they're going to have to help him improve in order to be somebody that other teams want more in the future than they do right now. So I can see your skepticism, but I guess I am open to the possibility that things could improve in time. And I think some of what Gregory said is going to be a big part of how they do it. Let's get to another recent move that embodies the identity that the Suns want to build and the problems trickling off of that with the coaching staff next. First, today's show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Do you ever wish managing your money felt easier? We all do, but with Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch Money puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. Track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Look, Monarch knows, I know, we all know, everybody has their little ways of doing this stuff. It just doesn't always add up to something that actually is productive or helpful. It's like a pad of paper, a spreadsheet over there, some random, conversation you try to remember with your partner or your parents or your family or whatever it might be. But Monarch Money allows you to take control of your finances all in one place, plan, budget, check things, keep up with yourself, and don't lose track of those goals. So take control of those finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. All right, Ben, let's keep it rolling here. So DeMarre Carroll will be the head coach of the Summer League team. I think we may have discussed that briefly when we discussed Dunn and Oso being named to the team on Tuesday's show, but
I don't think we did.
I think it's a great move either way. I mean, I think, he is he jumped pretty quickly into the coaching ranks after a career that we all remember as a really good role player. And he's a player development guy. And I think being able to grab an up and coming, hotshot player development dude is a really good grab for the Suns staff. Now, I don't really know if he's the right decision for Summer League. I mean, a lot of that stuff doesn't really matter, but I like him being on this staff regardless of this summer. I like him being next to Ott on a young team that needs to get better. And as we were just talking about, is trying to build a bunch of DeMarre Carrolls.
Yep. The reason why You just kind of briefly mentioned just like, I'm not sure if he's the right pick for the Summer League head coach. I do think he kind of is. Like, in a way, I think you want a head coach to be your Summer League head coach is because you're working with a bunch of young guys. Both of you guys are trying to find a mutual interest of moving up. And so I find that relationship a little bit easier. Whereas like if you have some old guy who's, already done a couple of years of assistant coaching, I think if you stick him in with the Summer League roster, a younger guy, former player, who, by the way, was not a shooter at all for the first like 5 years of his career, and then kind of learned to develop a jump shot, that extra relationship to add for guys like Brian Dunn to connect to him. And for those guys to know he's trying to build up his career or your career to help build up his career. Like there's a mutual interest there.
That's true.
But I think, but what I think is more interesting is that the Suns didn't just go from roster spot 1 to 15, building, the dog type of guys that Ryan Dunn kind of talked about in the press release or in the media availability yesterday, but toughness, right? And where does that start? You can't just have it on, as a poster in a locker room. Like you have to build this in from the inside out. And so the fact that they have someone that I believe like exudes a toughness and that kind of nature, I think is perfect for the Summer League. And that's what they're trying to build, man. If this team could have 15 DeMarre Carrolls, now obviously with varying skill, it's exactly what they would do. So I like the pick, and I like them getting a guy of the mold of the player that they're trying to become in the regular Phoenix Suns team. What about you, man?
Yeah, I think that we covered it on him. I mean, let's just jump to the other aspect of the coaching staff, the rest of the staff, because that's been, I think, a little less easygoing. Like, Carroll had the relationship from Bud's coaching tree, obviously. So, Ott coached, helped, was part of the staff when Carroll played in Atlanta. Then they both were on the past 2 years in LA and then in Cleveland together. But as Ott kind of alluded to in his press conference, the fact that not a lot of other teams changed coaches, especially not during the actual off season where like Memphis and Sacramento and Denver did it in season, but then New York ended up doing it after the press conference where Ott said that, but there weren't a lot of people available. There weren't a lot of coaches that changed seats, right? So that means even the lower level guys are just planted in their same roles. And you're kind of seeing that come to fruition in a way that, isn't great for Jordan Ott in his first season leading a team, where they're keeping Chayson Allen, who was a G League dude that, was in Milwaukee's G League team while Bud was there. He came over last year. He's going to stay. They're going to keep Brian Randall, although I guess I shouldn't say keep. They're going to bring him back from when Monty was here a couple of years back. And then they're, bringing on Carroll. And I think there's one other hire that I'm going to try to find while you take it from here. But they're still really looking for, I think, an experienced former head coach, preferably, like we've seen with guys like JJ Redick and Joe Mazzulla and others who have gotten hired at a young age with limited experience, to kind of just calm the waters, be a steadying presence who's been there and done that. That's a really big hole in this staff that I hope they can find a way to fill, but that's easier said than done. There's not a lot of candidates out there.
It's a gigantic hole in the staff because on one hand, here's the problem with having an inexperienced head coach. The first time he's head coaching a team in the NBA is his connections. Like, yes, he has a ton of connections, but he doesn't have them to the extent of like, hey, come over here and be our number one assistant because you'll have room to grow. Who knows? You get sent off somewhere else. Like, I don't really think that's going to be the case with Jordan Ott. And we've talked about, or at least, some of the guys that might get that spot. We've seen Darvin Ham, but it seems the person that's being heavily considered for that position is Steven Silas. And again, that shows
according to Gambo, yeah.
Yeah, according to Gambo, that's the immaturity of Jordan Ott's coaching tree. There's just not a lot there. And I look at someone like Steven Silas, like that could be a huge black hole in the Suns' number one assistant coach, because Steven Silas, Houston Rockets, it didn't go well. You had mentioned to me pre-show, he was on the staff for the Detroit Pistons, who lost like 500 games in a row. he doesn't have a great track record. And so building a staff, it's already kind of concerning that I think it's taking this long to have all the guys filled out. It feels like this would have already kind of been contingent on Jordan Ott getting the job. This is kind of what happens. But this is what happens when you take inexperience, man. You bring in a coach who doesn't have that many connections, and you might have to deal with the fact that Steven Silas or, Darvin Ham, I think, is a lot better than Steven Silas, but one of those guys is your lead assistant. Yeah. So it's worrisome, man.
It is. And like, I've seen some positivity from some corners of maybe Suns fans or just people, NBA fans who were like, oh, well, that makes sense. Silas coached Jalen Green. Well, yeah, and it went terribly. So I appreciate that they have a relationship, but get me somebody who has a relationship with Devin Booker or, Khaman Maluach for that matter. Having coached Jalen Green at a point in his career that was really troubling is not a great sign of your candidacy, in my opinion. We did hear from Jake Fisher and Mark Stein over at their newsletter that the Suns have expressed interest in Ham, but he has a job right now. He's the lead assistant in Milwaukee under Doc, so it's not like he's up on the market for, to be hired at the top dollar. It's you got to convince him to leave. I mean, I know Milwaukee's not a great situation, but coaches don't typically do that.
Well,
go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I mean, is it not like neither one might not be a great situation, but I could see Doc Rivers getting fired in the middle of the season much more quicker than I see Jordan Ott getting fired in the middle of the season. So if that's the case,
wouldn't Ham get the job?
Exactly.
So that?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying is why the Bucks position is better than the Suns position. Maybe he has aspirations of being a head coach again. And if that's the case, Milwaukee Bucks is a better job because I could see, Doc, maybe not because they're higher, they have 5 head coaches on the payroll right now, but that's kind of the point of like you were just making of like the differencing between Darvin Ham and Steven Silas is the Grand Canyon. Mm-hmm. Here's the only thing that I would say. Maybe Steven Silas, although he doesn't have a great track record, is better as the head assistant coach than he is as the head coach. Like all of your abnormalities and issues get magnified when you're the head coach. Maybe when he's the assistant guy, he is better at that. But overall, like if you're telling me which guy would be better, it's Ham.
Yeah, once upon a time, he was a really hotshot assistant. He was in Charlotte under Steve Clifford for a ton of years, and that's when he started to make a name for himself. Then he went to Dallas right at the beginning of Luka's career and in through the bubble, and then, of course, got the Houston job. So, it's not like he is some nobody, but, it's not. It wouldn't make me feel great that
it's not your first choice.
That he's the expertise on the staff, given that he didn't have a great run doing the thing that Ott wants to learn about, The last thing I want to throw out, though, just for the sake of kind of, end of a segment imagination, Taylor Jenkins was, of course, from the Bud coaching tree once upon a time as well. And I would imagine he almost got the Knicks job. He probably will be at the top of a lot of teams' list whenever the next opening comes up. But I would imagine that Jordan Ott has probably called Taylor Jenkins to say, hey, could you just come? Maybe it's just for one season. I get that. But could you just do me the favor? Matt will pay you well. Please come to Phoenix for a season. I would be shocked if that conversation hasn't happened, especially now that Jenkins didn't get that Knicks job and actually is without a job. He's still getting paid by Memphis probably, but he doesn't have anywhere to work. And why not come here?
Yeah, I think Taylor Jenkins would be a slam dunk, especially for a culture setter and a guy that when I think of like a coaching style, I think tough as nails, and that's what the Suns are trying to do. So I would totally agree with you. Taylor Jenkins would be awesome, and it's a good pull by you. Mm-hmm. I think it even is a little probably more perfect because it is probably just a 1-year thing. And after 1 year, once more coaching, guys get fired, it might be a little bit easier to find that head coaching assistant that you might need next year. So it might benefit both well for both parties. But yeah, Taylor Jenkins will be a slam dunk. I think it's a perfect guy, especially if you're trying to establish a culture. One of the things I worry about with Darvin Ham is when I see Darvin Ham, I don't think of tough, gritty. I think of strategic.
I think that's his reputation. I mean, even dating back to being a player, I think that's almost like the bad part of Ham for some people is he wears on them. That's what I think we heard in LA.
Well, okay. So maybe we have conflicting opinions about that. I think part of what happened with Darvin Ham as well is I think he was a little too mild-mannered in terms of like hands in pockets head coach. Easy adjustments that could have been made. When I think of like personality toughness, I think of Taylor Jenkins. Although you go back to those Brooklyn years, I do understand what you mean by like physicality coaching style. Continue.
All right, let's get to the last bit of news. Isaiah Livers getting the Suns' second two-way contract. Typically, we don't break down every single little two-way player. We haven't done a deep dive on CJ Huntley or anything, but I think this one is interesting in the type of scouting wild card that the Suns continue to make. We'll talk about what he brings to the table next. All right, closing out the show. 3 two-way contracts for each NBA team. The Suns have now filled their third and final slot. One of them went to Kobe Bryant, the 41st overall pick in the NBA draft. The other one went to CJ Huntley, who I just mentioned heading into the segment, from App State, who they nabbed on draft night, or night 2 of the draft, I guess I should say. And now Isaiah Livers will be the third. Clearly a pattern there, Ben. Big guys who can shoot the ball a little bit and bring positional size for what they're doing on an NBA court. I will also say that Livers has been one of my, I spend too much time thinking about the NBA crushes as a player for a bit. No, I'm not lying. I have a story. I'm sure I don't know if I've ever said it on Twitter. Maybe I can search myself to see, but I visited my friend shortly after he moved to New York City, one of my best friends in November of 2022. Okay. And that's the one season that Livers has basically had in the NBA where he actually played well. And it was Knicks Pistons. Terrible game. The Knicks were mediocre that year and the Pistons were atrocious. But Livers was like the one bright spot of that game. And I remember thinking, that dude's interesting. Like just one of those random games you watch where you're like, okay, that guy was kind of impressive, whatever. And then lo and behold, I saw the Shams tweet pop up, and here he is. I think he definitely fits the mold of the type of player the Suns have been targeting, and if he can recover from this hip surgery that took him out of all of last season, I think he's more than worthy of a flyer. Still hasn't quite hit his prime, and 6'8", can shoot the ball. Why not? I think it's a great chance to take on a player we've already seen play in the NBA and do a decent job.
Yeah, I kind of wish. So just so we're clear, I'll get to my opinion in just a second. I immediately wanted to call BS on what you were saying. Went to your Twitter account, searched up just Isaiah Livers from November 25th, 2022, 8:51 p.m. I'm assuming that's the game you're talking about.
Yeah.
Quote Isaiah Livers. I quote Isaiah Livers is good. You're freaking sicko.
I don't make stuff up.
Dude,
I told you. I'm glad I tweeted it. I'm glad that I was obsessed with Twitter enough to document that.
Dude, you're a freaking sicko, man. This is why people come to Locked On Phoenix Suns. They come for my outrageous takes and opinions at times, and they come for your just ridiculous consumption of the NBA. Just to my opinion, Isaiah Livers, I see it both ways. I wish they would have maybe done a little bit more of a better job going into undrafted NBA free agent guys, but they already kind of have those guys in Kobe Bryant and CJ Huntley. I just, I want more. I think bringing in an experienced player who is, again, big and can shoot the ball decently. I don't want to say amazing because he hasn't played a ton, but shoot the ball decently. It's perfect for a night in Atlanta when you have a ton of injuries and you need to call someone up from the G League and you give him a shot and you're like, hey, this kid can play. And you can never have too many big-bodied, tall players on this team where we continue to talk about size dominating the NBA. So although I wish they would take another gamble on an undrafted free agent guy because those guys are gold if you can hit on them. If you can hit on Isaiah Livers too, a guy that's 26 years old, hasn't in his prime, you're right. I would agree with you. I would agree that it's a good find. I'm a sicko for wanting to go get more free agent guys, but Isaiah Livers is good.
Photographic evidence. There it is.
You need to quote tweet that as soon as this show is over.
I did already. Yeah.
That's
and
so
what's
funny,
fun? You want to hear the most disgusting part of it, Ben? So he played 30 minutes in this game. 3 of 7 from the field for 7 points. And I still was like, he's good. Sometimes you just know. And I don't even know because he hasn't done anything in the NBA. So I could be absolutely wrong after all. But I just thought it was funny that some random dude I once got into for one night ended up being on the Suns. The other part of this that I think is worth pointing out is he was born in Kalamazoo. Shout out to Kalamazoo. That's where my mom was born. He was drafted by the Pistons and he went to the University of Michigan. So that is all the boxes. We probably should have started there, right? I mean, that's like the number one thing on his resume to get a job in Phoenix with the Suns.
So you're saying this was a Matt Ishbia signing? He asked everyone, he begged, guys, can I just sign one guy? Saw Michigan, called him over, gave him and he played in Detroit. That's not nothing. Josh Bartlestein.
Exactly. He played in Detroit while Bartlestein was there and while Taliaferro, their new head scout, was there. So I don't know if it was Ishbia. All I'm saying is the alignment is strong here.
It's great. I'm thrilled that the Suns signed a guy that Josh Bartlestein, I'm being facetious, just so everyone knows, that Josh Bartlestein was pounding the table for, and they finally said, all right, man. All right, Nepo baby. Here's Isaiah Livers. Feel good about it. All right, that's good. I'm happy Josh Bartlestein is still alive and well in the Phoenix Suns roster construction.
All right, we'll see.
Dude, you're such a sicko. Isaiah Livers, what a pull, man. What a pull. That's a immaculate grid pull right there 10 years from now.
It is. One thing I'll say, though, is it's not just me. And part of why I'm being all, cocky about it is I know Koo, our Locked On Pistons host, thought he was pretty decent, too. One of those guys where it's just you watch him for 52 games in a random lost Pistons season, you're going to have an opinion on him. And I remember Koo agreeing with me, and I was like, okay, so I wasn't going crazy there. So, we'll see if he turns into anything. I feel like it's probably too late for him to play in Summer League, but certainly, we'll see him with the Valley Suns. We'll see him potentially take the court at various points for the Phoenix Suns, and they could have gotten a little diamond in the rough, taking a chance on a guy who missed the season.
I'm going to buy you a G League Valley Suns Isaiah Livers jersey.
That's what I'm going to get. It's kind of a cool last name to have on a jersey, so I'll gladly wear it. All right, that'll wrap us up. Hit follow or subscribe if you haven't already. We'll be back the rest of the week as we march closer to Summer League and some more basketball to discuss. More comments from everybody, of course, as well. Enjoy your Wednesday. We'll talk to you next time.